Welcome to Cozy Sleep Haven. Wind down, snuggle up, and let's get cozy. Tonight's episode invites you to join Grace on a tranquil journey that blends discovery, connection, and the quiet wisdom of our feline friends. We'll begin in Grace's cozy studio, where the golden hour casts a warm glow across the room, and the gentle aroma of lavender and sandalwood soothes the air. Her soft, steady voice will guide you through a calming meditation, helping you release the weight of the day and embrace a moment of stillness. But as the day turns to night, a mysterious visitor appears, a curious white cat with a story of its own to share. Drawn by its quiet persistence, Grace follows the cat through Havenport's quiet streets, under the starlit sky, and into the heart of a hidden sanctuary. Within this secret garden, glowing with the light of fireflies and alive with the soft hum of life, Grace encounters a world of tranquility and connection. The cats who call this place home each carry their own stories, tales of resilience, healing, and trust. Through their quiet presence, Grace reflects on the simple joys of companionship and the power of finding peace in life's smallest moments. Here, at Cozy Sleep Haven, we celebrate the simple joys of winding down, the beauty of discovery, the comfort of connection, and the calming gift of being present in the here and now. We hope you'll take a moment to subscribe and join us again for more heartfelt journeys from Havenport. But for now, let's walk with Grace into the Garden of Stars. Listen to the wisdom of its feline residents, and let the magic of the sanctuary guide us into rest. The soft glow of golden hour streamed through the tall windows of Grace's meditation studio, painting the room with hues of amber and gold. Shelves lined with neatly arranged cushions and books on mindfulness cast long, gentle shadows across the floor. The faint scent of lavender and sandalwood lingered in the air, calming and warm. It was the perfect setting for the studio's final meditation class of the evening. Seated on a large cushion at the front of the room, Grace's serene voice filled the space, guiding her small group of attendees into stillness. "Close your eyes if you're comfortable," she said softly, her tone soothing and steady. "Let your shoulders relax and feel the weight of the day melt away. Take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly let it out through your mouth." The rhythmic sound of steady breathing filled the room, blending with the faint rustle of leaves outside. Grace continued, her words a gentle lullaby. With each inhale, imagine golden light filling your body, warm and radiant. And with each exhale, release anything weighing on your mind. Let it drift away like leaves carried by a gentle autumn breeze. Her own breathing slowed to match the cadence of the class, her voice lowering even further. Picture yourself in a place of calm. Perhaps a soft meadow under the stars, or a quiet corner of your home where you feel most at peace. Hold that image close as you breathe, allowing it to bring you comfort. As the guided meditation came to a close, Grace offered a final thought. take one last deep breath in and out. When you're ready, gently open your eyes, bringing this sense of calm with you as you move through your evening. The attendees stirred quietly, their movements unhurried, as they stretched and prepared to leave. Grace offered each a warm smile as they gathered their belongings, her voice still hushed. "Thank you for sharing your practice with me tonight. May your evening be restful." Once the last person departed and the studio door softly clicked shut, Grace let out a contented sigh, savoring the quiet stillness. She began tidying the cushions and blankets scattered around the room, her movements slow and deliberate. The golden hour light had shifted, softening into twilight, and the first hint of stars sparkled faintly outside the windows. Just as she finished her tasks, a faint sound broke the silence, a soft, almost melodic meow. Grace paused, turning her head toward the door. The sound came again, clearer this time, gentle yet insistent. Intrigued, she stepped across the room and opened the door. The evening air greeted her, cool and fragrant with the scent of night-blooming flowers. There, sitting patiently on the stone step, was a small white cat. Its fur glowed softly in the fading light, and its green eyes met hers with a quiet intensity that seemed almost otherworldly. "Well, aren't you a surprise?" Grace murmured, crouching down to meet the cat's gaze. The cat blinked slowly, a gesture of trust, and stood, tail curling confidently as it looked back toward the street. Then, as if inviting her to follow, the cat took a deliberate step forward and paused. Grace rose to her feet, her curiosity piqued. Grabbing a light shawl from the hook by the door, she took a step outside. "All right," she said softly. "Lead the way." The cat moved with purpose, its white form standing out against the deepening shadows of Havenport's streets. Grace followed, her steps quiet on the cobblestones, a sense of wonder blooming in her chest as the golden hour faded into night. The white cat led Grace through the quiet streets of Havenport, the soft golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the cobblestones. The town was in a liminal moment, caught between the bustling energy of the day and the serene stillness of evening. Lanterns lining the streets flickered to life one by one, their warm glow adding to the enchantment of the hour. Grace's footsteps fell into a rhythmic cadence as she followed the cat, her shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. The town square came into view, its benches empty, and the fountain at its center glistening in the last rays of sunlight. The cat didn't hesitate, weaving around the fountain and continuing along a path lined with blooming flowers. Grace marveled at the serenity of the scene. The petals seemed to glow as though catching fire from the setting sun, their soft fragrance mingling with the crisp evening air. The cat's purposeful strides carried them farther from the heart of the town, the cobblestones giving way to a narrow dirt path. Grace noticed how the surroundings began to change. The edges of Havenport's houses blurred into thickening greenery, and the air grew cooler, tinged with the earthy scent of moss and damp leaves. She glanced up at the sky, now a watercolor blend of orange, pink, and violet. Stars began to emerge faintly, their twinkle delicate and tentative against the deepening hues. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, carrying the sound of distant waves lapping against the shoreline. The path grew narrower, enclosed by tall hedges on either side, and soon led to a wrought iron gate cloaked in ivy. Grace paused, her breath catching at the sight. The gate was ornate, its design intricate with swirling patterns that seemed to mimic the flow of nature itself. The ivy glinted in the fading light, its leaves shimmering as though brushed with silver. The cat stopped in front of the gate and turned to look at Grace, its green eyes luminous in the twilight. It let out a soft meow, as if to say, "This is it." Grace approached slowly, her fingers brushing the cool metal of the gate. She felt a quiet sense of anticipation, as though she were on the cusp of discovering something extraordinary. Pushing gently, the gate creaked open, revealing the hidden world beyond. Her eyes widened as she stepped through. The garden was breathtaking, a sanctuary bathed in the ethereal glow of twilight. Fireflies danced in the air, their lights flickering like tiny stars. The soft hum of crickets and the distant trickle of water created a soothing melody. Paths wound through clusters of wildflowers, their colors muted yet magical in the dim light. Cats were everywhere, their movements graceful and unhurried. Some lounged on moss-covered stones, others prowled through the underbrush, their eyes catching and reflecting the faint light. The air seemed alive with a quiet, enchanting energy, as if this place existed in a world of its own. Grace stood at the entrance, awestruck by the beauty around her. The white cat brushed against her leg before joining a group of others gathered near a softly glowing fountain in the center of the sanctuary. Grace took a deep breath, the tranquility of the space washing over her. With a quiet smile, she stepped fully into the garden, ready to explore the sanctuary's secrets under the canopy of twilight. Grace moved slowly down the mossy path, her senses absorbing every detail of the magical garden. The air was cool, with a faint earthy scent of freshly turned soil and blooming night jasmine. Fireflies flickered like tiny lanterns, illuminating patches of wildflowers and casting soft golden glows across the cats roaming nearby. Her footsteps were nearly silent on the moss-covered stones as she ventured deeper into the sanctuary. The garden seemed to have a life of its own, every rustling leaf and gentle breeze harmonizing with the soft purrs and delicate meows of its feline residents. The first stars of the night twinkled faintly above, their light peeking through the canopy of trees that arched gracefully over the sanctuary. Grace paused beside a low, curved bench that was almost hidden by vines. A long-haired tabby stretched lazily across its surface, its fur catching the faint starlight. The cat opened one eye and regarded her with quiet curiosity before settling back into its nap, its tail twitching lightly in contentment. Ahead, the path widened to reveal the centerpiece of the sanctuary, a round fountain crafted from weathered stone. The water sparkled as it bubbled softly, the sound a soothing accompaniment to the quiet symphony of the garden. Several cats lounged around the fountain, their postures relaxed, yet regal. A sleek black cat perched on the rim, its piercing yellow eyes fixed on Grace, as though it were the silent guardian of this magical place. She approached the fountain, drawn by its tranquil presence. The water's surface shimmered, reflecting the emerging constellations above and creating a dreamy effect. A small calico cat stretched out beside the fountain, its paws dangling over the edge as it watched Grace with a curious gaze. Grace knelt near the fountain, her fingers grazing the cool, smooth stone. The cats around her seemed to accept her presence without hesitation. One by one, they returned to their previous activities, grooming, stretching, or simply resting in the quietude of the space. She couldn't help but marvel at the harmony of the scene. Each cat moved with an elegance that seemed to mirror the sanctuary itself, graceful, unhurried, and entirely at peace. The garden felt like a world apart, a place untouched by the noise and chaos of the outside world. As she stood and began to wander further into the sanctuary, her attention was drawn to the smaller details that added to its charm. A cluster of white lilies glowed faintly under the firefly's light. A gentle breeze carried the faint rustling of fern fronds and the soft murmur of the fountain. Everything about the space invited her to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to let herself be fully present. The white cat, her mysterious guide, reappeared and sat a few feet away, tail curled neatly around its paws. It watched her with calm intensity, as though ensuring she was truly at ease before continuing its journey. Grace smiled softly at the cat and whispered, "Where to next?" The cat rose gracefully, flicking its tail, and began walking further into the sanctuary. Grace followed, her steps light, her heart open to the wonders yet to unfold in this twilight haven. As Grace followed the white cat deeper into the sanctuary, she began to notice the unique personalities of its many feline residents. Each cat seemed to inhabit its own small corner of the garden, contributing to the quiet magic of the space. To her left, a tabby with sleek, striped fur lounged atop a sun-warmed stone. Though the sun had set, the stone still retained a hint of golden hour's warmth, and the tabby stretched luxuriously before rolling onto its back, paws tucked close to its chest. Grace chuckled softly at its obvious comfort, the corners of her mouth lifting into a smile. Ahead, an orange kitten darted after a firefly, its tiny paws batting at the glowing light as it flitted through the air. The kitten's playful energy brought an air of whimsy to the otherwise serene garden, and Grace couldn't help but crouch to watch. The firefly eventually escaped into the higher branches of a nearby tree, and the kitten, undeterred, pounced on a fallen leaf instead, carrying it proudly in its mouth like a great prize. To her right, near a low stone wall covered in ivy, a regal black cat sat perched like a sentry. Its sleek fur gleamed under the faint light of the stars, and its yellow eyes watched her every move with calm intensity. Grace felt no unease under the cat's gaze. Instead, it seemed to welcome her, acknowledging her presence with a slow, deliberate blink. Grace continued to explore, her movements slow and respectful, as if not to disturb the tranquil rhythm of the garden. Near a cluster of wildflowers, she spotted a pair of inseparable siblings, a gray and white duo, curled together in a tight ball of fur. Their quiet purring created a soft hum that blended seamlessly with the other sounds of the sanctuary. The cat's individuality was undeniable. Some were adventurous, prowling through the underbrush or leaping gracefully between rocks. Others were content to rest, observing their surroundings with a lazy curiosity. Grace noticed one particular long-haired calico cat seated atop a wooden bench, its fluffy tail wrapped elegantly around its paws. The cat seemed to exude an air of wisdom, its gaze thoughtful as it watched the garden's activity unfold. As Grace wandered, she became increasingly attuned to the details around her, the rustling of leaves as a cat darted through the underbrush, the faint plop of water, As a curious paw dipped into the fountain, the soft meows exchanged between two companions lounging near a cluster of ferns. All of it created a symphony of life that felt deeply calming and restorative. The white cat, her guide, paused near a wooden archway draped in wisteria, its delicate purple flowers faintly illuminated by the fireflies. It sat patiently, its green eyes catching the faint starlight, waiting for Grace to take in the scene around her. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the serenity of this place, a haven where each cat seemed to embody its own small story, adding richness to the sanctuary's tapestry. Grace took a deep breath, letting the cool, fragrant air fill her lungs. Her heart felt lighter, her mind quieter, as though the garden's peace was seeping into her very being. The cats, each with their own quiet presence, were not just inhabitants of the sanctuary. They were its soul, living embodiments of the refuge it offered. Grace followed the white cat through the archway, eager to see what the next part of this enchanting journey held. Beyond the wisteria-draped archway, the garden opened into a wider clearing. At its center stood a small weathered gazebo, its white lattice sides wrapped in ivy and adorned with twinkling strands of tiny lights. The soft glow of the lights cast a warm, inviting aura over the space, blending seamlessly with the starlit sky above. The fountain was visible in the distance, its gentle bubbling adding to the tranquil symphony of the garden. Sitting on a bench within the gazebo was a woman, her silver hair catching the light like moonbeams. She was dressed simply in a soft cardigan and flowing skirt, her posture relaxed and welcoming. At her feet, a small cluster of cats lounged contentedly, as though drawn to her calm presence. She looked up as Grace approached, her eyes crinkling into a kind smile. "Welcome," the woman said, her voice warm and serene, carrying the gentle authority of someone who had spent years nurturing this special place. "I wondered when you might find us." Grace stopped a few steps away, smiling back. "You were expecting me?" "In a way," the woman replied, motioning for Grace to join her on the bench. "The cats have a way of choosing who they bring here. I'm Eleanor, the keeper of this sanctuary." Grace nodded, settling onto the bench beside Eleanor. The seat was cool and sturdy, its wooden planks worn smooth from years of use. A small gray kitten climbed into Eleanor's lap, and she stroked its fur absent-mindedly, her gaze soft and contemplative. "This place is incredible," Grace said, her voice hushed, as though afraid to disturb the peace of the garden. "It feels magical." Eleanor chuckled lightly, her laugh a melodic counterpoint to the stillness around them. "It does, doesn't it? This sanctuary has been here for decades, a refuge for strays and wanderers, both the feline kind and the human kind," she added with a knowing look. Grace smiled, glancing around at the cats scattered throughout the clearing. "How did it all start?" "It began with one cat," Eleanor said, her voice growing nostalgic. "A tiny, shivering thing I found on my doorstep one winter night. I brought her here, hoping to give her a place to heal. Soon others began to arrive, as if they knew this was a safe haven. Over time, the sanctuary grew." Grace listened intently, her heart swelling with admiration for Eleanor's quiet dedication. "Do you take care of all of them yourself?" Eleanor nodded, her hand never ceasing its gentle strokes along the kitten's back. "The garden does much of the work on its own. It's as though the space was always meant for this. But yes, I make sure they have what they need: food, comfort, companionship, and in return, they bring peace to those who find their way here. Grace's gaze drifted back to the cats, their soft movements and quiet purring weaving a spell of calm over her. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Thank you for letting me be a part of it." Eleanor's smile widened, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "The cats chose you, Grace, and they don't make those choices lightly." The words carried a weight that Grace didn't fully understand but felt deeply. She leaned back on the bench, letting the sanctuary's tranquility envelop her as the gray kitten abandoned Eleanor's lap and padded softly toward her. It climbed onto Grace's lap, circling once before settling in with a soft purr. Eleanor watched the exchange, her expression one of quiet approval. "It seems you've made a friend," she said. "Come, there's more to see." The two women rose, the kitten still content in Grace's arms. Eleanor led her deeper into the sanctuary, the fireflies lighting their path, and the cats trailing behind like silent shadows. The soft sound of trickling water grew louder as Grace and Eleanor approached the fountain at the heart of the sanctuary. The cats that had followed them trailed off to explore their own favorite corners, leaving Grace with the gray kitten, still curled contentedly in her arms. The fountain's glow grew brighter with each step, illuminated by the faint light of the stars and the flicker of fireflies dancing above its surface. The fountain was even more captivating up close. Made of smooth, weathered stone, it had an intricate design of vines and flowers carved along its edges, their shapes softened by time. The water bubbled gently from its center, cascading into the shallow pool below. The surface reflected the night sky, creating the illusion of stars shimmering within its depths. Grace stopped at the edge, mesmerized. The gray kitten stirred in her arms, its tiny paws pressing lightly against her chest as it stretched before settling again. Eleanor stepped beside her, her voice soft and contemplative. "This fountain has been here longer than I have," she said. "It's always been a place of reflection, a source of calm for those who come to the sanctuary." Grace crouched down, running her fingers along the cool stone rim. The water's soothing sound seemed to wrap around her, quieting her thoughts. "It feels alive," she said softly, her words barely more than a whisper. "Like it's part of the sanctuary's soul." Eleanor nodded. "In many ways it is. The cats gather here often, as though they sense its energy. It has a way of drawing out what's hidden, calming fears, easing burdens, and reminding us of what truly matters." As if on cue, a calico cat approached the fountain, its movements slow and deliberate. It leaned down to sip from the water, its reflection rippling gently with each touch of its tongue. Grace watched, her heart swelling with a quiet awe. Eleanor gestured to a moss-covered bench nearby. "Sit," she suggested, her tone warm and inviting. "Let the fountain speak to you." Grace hesitated for a moment, then followed Eleanor's suggestion, easing onto the bench. The gray kitten hopped from her arms onto her lap, its purring a soft, rhythmic hum that blended with the fountain's melody. Grace leaned back, her body sinking into the bench's firm yet comforting surface. She let her gaze rest on the fountain, her thoughts drifting. The sanctuary seemed to hold time at bay, allowing her to exist fully in the moment. She reflected on her day, her week, and the unexpected journey that had brought her here. The worries she'd carried felt distant, their weight lifted by the peaceful atmosphere. Eleanor watched her quietly, her presence as steady and grounding as the sanctuary itself. After a moment, she spoke. Each of these cats has a story. Some have known hardship, others have simply wandered, searching for a place to belong. They remind us that healing is a process, one that requires patience and kindness. Grace looked down at the gray kitten in her lap, its tiny body rising and falling with each breath. She ran her fingers gently over its soft fur, feeling a connection she couldn't quite explain. "It's incredible how much comfort they bring," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor smiled. "They give us more than we realize, and in their own way, they remind us of the importance of being present, of finding joy in small, quiet moments." The fountain continued its gentle song as the two women sat in companionable silence, their reflections mingling with the starlit surface of the water. Grace felt a deep sense of peace, as though the sanctuary had given her something she hadn't known she needed. As the soft hum of the fountain filled the air, Eleanor began to share the stories of some of the sanctuary's residents. Her voice was calm and unhurried, blending seamlessly with the tranquil atmosphere. "You see that calico cat over there?" Eleanor gestured toward the fountain, where the elegant calico Grace had noticed earlier now lay sprawled on a sun-warmed stone. "Her name is Marigold. She found her way here after a storm, thin, soaked, and scared. It took weeks of gentle patience before she trusted me enough to approach. But now, as you can see, she's one of the queens of this place. She spends most of her days basking by the fountain." Grace smiled, watching Marigold stretch lazily, her tail flicking with contentment. "She looks so peaceful now," she said, stroking the gray kitten in her lap. Eleanor nodded. "She's a reminder that time and kindness can mend even the deepest fears." Eleanor's eyes shifted toward a pair of orange and white kittens chasing each other near a cluster of ferns. Their playful antics filled the clearing with energy, their tiny bodies darting and tumbling in bursts of motion. "Those two are Jasper and Juniper," Eleanor said with a chuckle. "They were abandoned as newborns left in a box near the edge of the forest. When I found them, they were so small and fragile, I wasn't sure they'd survive. But they did, stronger and more mischievous than ever." Grace couldn't help but laugh as Jasper pounced on Juniper, only to roll over and let his sister pin him down in a mock wrestling match. "They're inseparable," she observed, her tone warm. "They are," Eleanor agreed. "They've taught me a lot about resilience and the joy of simply being present in the moment." As they spoke, a sleek black cat emerged from the shadows of a nearby tree. Its movements were deliberate, its posture regal. The cat made its way to the fountain, leapt gracefully onto the rim, and settled there, surveying the garden with quiet authority. "And that," Eleanor said, her voice tinged with affection, "is Midnight. He's the self-appointed guardian of the sanctuary. He came to us many years ago, a stray who had clearly lived a hard life. At first he kept his distance, but eventually he decided this was his home. Now he watches over the others, ensuring they're safe." Grace's gaze lingered on Midnight, who seemed to acknowledge her presence with a slow blink before returning to his vigilant watch. "He's magnificent," she said softly, sensing the depth of wisdom and strength in the cat's demeanor. Eleanor leaned back on the bench, her hands resting in her lap. "Each of them has a story, Grace. Some are tales of hardship, others of quiet wandering. But all of them have found something here, a place to heal, to rest, and to simply be. Grace nodded, her fingers still idly stroking the gray kitten. She looked around at the cats, each one contributing to the sanctuary's sense of harmony. "It's amazing how much they give back," she murmured. "Even without words, they seem to understand so much." Eleanor smiled, her gaze soft. "That's the beauty of it. They don't need words. Their presence is enough." The fountain's gentle bubbling provided a comforting backdrop as the two women sat in reflective silence. Grace felt a deep appreciation for the sanctuary and the stories it held, each one a testament to the quiet power of care and compassion. The gray kitten in Grace's lap stirred, stretching its tiny paws before settling back down with a soft sigh. Grace smiled, running her fingers gently along its fur. Its soft purring resonated against her fingertips, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to echo the sanctuary's calm energy. Eleanor observed the pair with a knowing look. "It seems you've made a friend," she said softly. Grace glanced down at the kitten, whose half-closed eyes radiated trust. "It feels like she chose me," she replied, her voice full of wonder. "Do the cats usually do that?" Eleanor nodded. "Oh yes, they have an uncanny way of knowing who needs them most. It's as if they can sense your heart, your energy, and when they decide you're the right person, there's no turning back." Grace chuckled, the kitten's small, warm body a reassuring weight in her lap. "She's perfect," she murmured, tracing the kitten's tiny ears with the tip of her finger. "What's her story?" Eleanor smiled fondly. "That's Willow. She was the smallest of a litter born here last spring. A fragile thing at first. Her siblings were much stronger, but she had a quiet determination that saw her through. Now, she's thriving." Grace looked down at Willow with admiration, noting the kitten's delicate frame and bright, curious eyes. "You're a little survivor, aren't you?" she whispered. As if in response, Willow lifted her head, nuzzling against Grace's hand before settling back into her lap. The gesture warmed Grace's heart, filling her with an unexpected but welcome sense of connection. Eleanor leaned back, her hands resting on the bench. "They have a way of teaching us, don't they? In their quiet, unassuming way, they remind us to slow down, to trust, and to find joy in simple things." Grace nodded, her gaze drifting over the sanctuary. The cats moved through the space like soft shadows, each one embodying the peace and stillness of the garden. The fountain's gentle bubbling provided a meditative rhythm, its sound blending with the rustle of leaves and the faint hum of crickets. Willow shifted again, her tiny paws kneading Grace's shawl before curling up even tighter. Grace felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over her, as though the sanctuary itself were wrapping her in its embrace. "She's quite taken with you," Eleanor remarked, her tone warm. "And you with her, I think." Grace met Eleanor's eyes and smiled. "I think so too. She reminds me to be still, to just be." Eleanor's expression softened, her gaze thoughtful. "That's the magic of this place, Grace. The cats teach us as much as we care for them, maybe more." Grace's fingers continued to trace slow, soothing circles along Willow's fur. The kitten's purring grew softer, its breathing steady and peaceful. Grace closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself sink into the quiet harmony of the sanctuary. It was as though the weight of the world had lifted, replaced by a profound sense of belonging. When she opened her eyes again, the sky above had deepened into a rich indigo, stars twinkling brightly against the velvet backdrop. The sanctuary was illuminated by the soft glow of fireflies, their light shimmering like tiny beacons in the night. Willow stirred, lifting her head to blink sleepily at Grace. Grace smiled, cradling the kitten close as she rose from the bench. "Thank you for trusting me, little one," she whispered. Eleanor stood as well, her presence steady and reassuring. "You'll carry this moment with you, Grace. The cats have a way of leaving an imprint on your soul." Grace nodded, her heart full as she followed Eleanor toward the fountain once more. Willow nestled in her arms, her small, steady purring the perfect accompaniment to the sanctuary's serene symphony. Grace followed Eleanor to a quiet corner of the sanctuary, where a moss-covered bench nestled under the shelter of a towering oak tree, its branches arched gracefully above, their leaves rustling softly in the night breeze. The bench, surrounded by clusters of glowing wildflowers and softly flickering fireflies, seemed to invite her to pause and simply exist within the garden's peaceful embrace. "Sit here," Eleanor said gently, gesturing to the bench. "This is one of my favorite spots, perfect for reflecting." Grace lowered herself onto the cool stone, cradling Willow close in her arms. The kitten stretched once before settling again, its tiny form curled into a warm ball against her chest. Eleanor remained standing for a moment, her gaze sweeping across the sanctuary with quiet pride, before taking a seat on a nearby rock. The night sky above was breathtaking, a canvas of deep indigo punctuated by a spray of shimmering stars. Their light filtered through the canopy of leaves, casting intricate patterns on the ground. The sanctuary seemed to glow with an otherworldly radiance, as though it were a secret realm untouched by time. Grace leaned back against the bench, her breathing slowing as she absorbed the tranquility of the scene. The soft hum of the fountain blended with the faint chirping of crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves, creating a soothing melody that wrapped around her like a blanket. Willow's rhythmic purring was a gentle vibration against Grace's chest, grounding her in the moment. She ran her fingers lightly along the kitten's fur, her touch slow and deliberate. The world outside the sanctuary felt distant, its noise and worries unable to penetrate the haven's protective barrier. Eleanor broke the silence, her voice low and steady. "Do you feel it, Grace? The way this place seems to breathe with you, inviting you to let go of everything else?" Grace nodded, her eyes still fixed on the stars above. "It's like the sanctuary knows what you need before you do. It's indescribable." Eleanor smiled, her expression serene. "That's the gift of this place. It reminds us of what matters most, the simplicity of the present moment, the connections we share, and the quiet beauty all around us." Grace closed her eyes, letting the words settle in her heart. The soft scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted through the air, mingling with the earthiness of moss and the faint salt of the nearby sea. She felt as though the sanctuary itself were cradling her, whispering its timeless wisdom in the language of the stars. Willow shifted slightly, her purring softening into a quiet murmur as she nuzzled closer. Grace smiled, a sense of profound peace filling her chest. She had never felt so fully present, so deeply attuned to herself and her surroundings. Minutes stretched into an indeterminate span of time as Grace rested in the garden's embrace. The sanctuary seemed alive, its rhythms perfectly aligned with her own. Each breath felt lighter, as though she were inhaling the sanctuary's peace and exhaling the weight of her day. Eleanor rose quietly, her movements as gentle as the breeze. "Stay as long as you like," she said softly. "This space is yours now, too." Grace opened her eyes and nodded, her gratitude shining in her expression. "Thank you, Eleanor, for everything." Eleanor gave a warm smile before stepping away, leaving Grace alone with the stars, the fountain's melody, and the comforting presence of the garden's feline inhabitants. Grace leaned her head back, letting her thoughts drift like clouds across the night sky. The sanctuary had offered her something she hadn't known she needed, a place to simply be, to heal, and to reconnect with the beauty of the present moment. As Grace sat on the moss-covered bench, her gaze lifted once again to the vast expanse of the starry sky. The quiet energy of the sanctuary enveloped her, and she felt a rare clarity, as though her thoughts had untangled themselves and arranged into an effortless calm. Willow stirred in her lap, stretching her tiny paws before settling again, her purring steady and rhythmic. Grace's hand rested gently on the kitten's back, her fingers moving in slow, soothing circles. The simple act felt grounding, connecting her to this serene moment. Eleanor's voice returned, soft and thoughtful. She had lingered nearby, watching Grace's quiet transformation. "You know," she began, "I've often wondered who benefits more from this sanctuary, the cats or the people who find their way here." Grace turned her head to meet Eleanor's gaze, her expression curious. "What do you mean?" Eleanor smiled, her features bathed in the faint glow of fireflies. "When I started caring for the cats, I thought I was helping them, and I was, of course. But over time, I realized they were teaching me just as much. They taught me to be patient, to slow down, to appreciate life's quiet moments." Grace nodded, her mind drifting to the tiny kitten curled against her. "They seem to know exactly what we need," she said softly. "It's like they have a kind of wisdom we can only begin to understand." Eleanor chuckled lightly. "Perhaps they do. Or perhaps it's that they live so fully in the present. They don't dwell on the past or worry about the future. They simply exist, finding joy in a patch of sunlight or the sound of rustling leaves." Grace leaned back, her eyes once again drawn to the stars above. "It's something we forget to do, isn't it? To just be." Eleanor's gaze softened. "We do. Life pulls us in so many directions, and we lose touch with the small moments that bring us peace. But the cats, they remind us. They show us that healing isn't about doing more. It's about letting go." Grace let the words settle, her chest rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. She thought about her own life, the endless to-do lists, the pressure to always move forward, to achieve more. Here, in this hidden sanctuary, all of that felt far away, almost irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was this moment, this place. Willow shifted again, her purring vibrating softly against Grace's hand. The kitten's warmth was a gentle reminder of the simplicity Eleanor spoke of, a simplicity Grace hadn't realized she was missing. "This place, it's like a mirror," Grace said quietly. "It reflects back what you need, even if you don't know you're looking for it." Eleanor nodded, her smile tinged with wisdom. "Exactly. The sanctuary gives what it can, but it's the cats that truly heal. Each of them carries a story, a lesson, and in their own way, they share it with us." Grace's heart swelled with gratitude, her connection to the sanctuary deepening with every passing moment. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the fountain, the faint rustle of leaves, and Willow's steady purring lull her into a meditative state. She wasn't just a visitor here. She was part of this world now, a world where healing was as natural as the stars appearing in the night sky. The soft glow of the sanctuary seemed to shift as the night deepened, the firefly's light growing gentler, the hum of crickets more subdued. Grace stirred on the moss-covered bench, her heart heavy with the realization that it was time to leave this magical place. Willow, still nestled in her lap, stretched her tiny paws and blinked up at her with sleepy contentment. Eleanor approached, her presence as quiet and steady as the garden itself. "The sanctuary is always here," she said softly, as if reading Grace's thoughts. "You can return whenever you need it." Grace nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "I feel like I'll carry it with me, even when I'm not here." Eleanor's smile widened, her silver hair catching the faint light of the stars. "That's the gift of this place. It stays with you, like a gentle reminder to slow down and find peace in the little moments." Grace rose from the bench, cradling Willow carefully in her arms. The kitten nuzzled against her, its soft purring a quiet reassurance. She followed Eleanor toward the sanctuary's entrance, the path illuminated by the faint glow of fireflies. The other cats lingered in the shadows, their movements fluid and unhurried, as if bidding her a silent farewell. As they approached the ivy-covered gate, the white cat that had first led Grace to the sanctuary reappeared. It sat poised and regal, its green eyes meeting Grace's with quiet intensity. With a soft meow, it rose and padded ahead, leading the way back toward the world beyond the gate. Eleanor paused beside the gate, her hand resting lightly on the wrought iron. "The cats choose who to bring here," she said, her voice low and reflective. "And they chose you for a reason." Grace glanced down at Willow, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I feel like they've given me so much," she said, "more than I could ever give back." Eleanor's gaze softened. "They don't ask for much, just a little love and a little patience, and in return, they give us more than we realize." Grace stepped through the gate, her movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring each moment. The white cat waited patiently on the other side, its tail flicking in gentle anticipation. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the warm glow of the sanctuary. "Thank you," Grace said, her voice full of sincerity, "for everything." Eleanor nodded, her smile calm and knowing. "This isn't goodbye, Grace. It's simply until next time." The gate creaked softly as it closed behind her, the sanctuary fading into the shadows of the night. The white cat began to lead her back through the winding path toward Havenport, its movements graceful and assured. The stars above seemed to guide her steps, their light twinkling faintly against the velvet sky. As she walked, Grace's mind was quiet, her heart full. The sanctuary had left an indelible mark on her soul, its peace and beauty now a part of her. She glanced down at Willow, who had drifted into a light sleep in her arms. The kitten's warmth was a reminder of the sanctuary's gift, a gift she would carry with her always. The town's soft glow appeared in the distance, its familiar sights drawing her back to the world she knew. But Grace felt different now, lighter, as though the sanctuary's magic had settled deep within her. She stepped onto Havenport's cobblestone streets, the white cat giving her one last glance before disappearing into the night. With Willow cradled against her chest, Grace made her way back to her studio, the faint scent of jasmine and moss lingering on her shawl. Her heart was calm, her mind at ease, and the sanctuary's gentle wisdom echoing in her thoughts. Grace stepped into the familiar warmth of her studio, the soft light from a single lamp casting golden hues across the room. Willow stirred slightly in her arms, letting out a small meow before nuzzling closer. The studio felt different tonight, quieter, more serene, as though the sanctuary's peace had followed her home. She moved to her favorite chair, a cozy armchair draped with a knit blanket, and carefully set Willow down on a cushion nearby. The kitten stretched luxuriously before curling up again, its purring a gentle accompaniment to the quiet of the room. Grace lit a single candle, its soft glow flickering against the darkened windows. She sat down, a journal and pen in her lap, her thoughts still immersed in the magic of the sanctuary. The memory of the fountain's gentle bubbling, the firefly's glow, and the warmth of the cats filled her chest with a profound sense of gratitude. She opened the journal, her pen hovering over the blank page. Slowly she began to write, her words flowing like the water in the sanctuary's fountain. Tonight I found a hidden world, a place where time slows, where silence speaks, and where every breath feels like a gift. The cats, with their quiet wisdom and gentle presence, reminded me of the beauty in stillness and the power of connection. Each one carries a story, a lesson, a light, and they've given me something I didn't know I needed, a sense of peace, of belonging, of wonder. Grace paused, her gaze drifting to Willow, who had drifted into a deep sleep on the cushion. The kitten's tiny body rose and fell with each breath, a perfect picture of calm. Grace smiled, her heart full. Her pen moved again, the words coming easily. I've learned tonight that healing isn't about doing, it's about being. It's about opening your heart, letting go of what weighs you down, and embracing the quiet magic of the present moment. The sanctuary isn't just a place, it's a reminder, a reflection of what we can carry within ourselves every day. And for that, I am endlessly grateful. She closed the journal, setting it aside with a sense of completion. The candle's soft glow flickered in the corner of her vision, its warmth wrapping around her like a familiar hug. Grace leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes and letting her breathing slow. The sanctuary's tranquility lingered in her mind, the memories vivid and soothing. The image of the fountain's shimmering surface, the regal black cat perched on its edge, and the playful antics of the kittens played like a gentle dream behind her closed eyelids. As the night deepened, Grace felt herself drifting into sleep, her body sinking into the comfort of the chair. Willow's soft purring was the last sound she heard, a lullaby that carried her into peaceful rest. Good night.